Happy Tuesday. It is Tuesday, March 1st in the year of 2022, and welcome to another edition of Tuesdays with Thom, brought to you by the Best Girl Consulting Firm. So we closed out last month, Black History Month, with actor David Palladino. David was great. David brought us up on his personal Black history with his story of being born to biracial parents, but growing up believing both his biological parents were Italian. It's an incredible story, and we appreciate David sharing it with us. So we begin this month as the first day of Women's History Month. Throughout this month, we will bring you enterprising women such as Rochelle Jamerson Holmes, Jasmine Motley Maddox, Loretta Freeman, and a special guest along the way. We'll also discuss our personal women's history, whether it be family, community, and or educators, and we all have a woman's history in our own personal history. Also, the newly nominated Supreme Court Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson will begin a round of meetings with influential senators in her confirmation bid. Judge Jackson will meet with Senators Mitch McConnell, Senator Dick Durbin, Senator Chuck Grassley, and Senator Chuck Schumer this week. Speaking of women's history, if Judge Brown, my computer decided that it didn't want to stay on its stand. Speaking of women's history, if Judge Brown is confirmed to the Supreme Court, of course, she will be the first Black female justice. So, but however, and of course, we had Judge U.W. Clement on a couple of 3 weeks ago, and Judge Clement was, I would say, pretty opposed to Judge Jackson. And what I will encourage you to do if you're out there to read an article in the Washington Post entitled "Opinion: Did Ketanji Brown Jackson Rule Against Black Workers? It's Not So Simple." Rather than my trying to get into legalities and the details of the legal legalities, I'll encourage you to read this article and of course, as I always do, make up your own mind regarding what the situation is. Interesting. Judge Clemens was adamantly opposed to this woman, and he is in the article, mentioned in the article. And again, I don't know enough to tell you where you should be because I don't know exactly where I am. So we will stay on top of it, and we'll go from there. Good morning to everybody out there checking in with us. We appreciate you in the chat. So to start this month off, we will talk about something that is very personal to all of us, and that's children, specifically Children's Hospital of Alabama, with our G-list guest, Doug Dean. Doug Dean joined Children's of Alabama as Chief Human Resource Officer in March of '99. And if you're familiar with Children's of Alabama, you know how important the work is that they do. As Chief Human Resource Officer, Doug Dean is responsible for all human resource operations, including executive and physician compensation, benefits, employee relations, recruitment, selection, compensation, benefits, I'd said that, employee health, human resource development, and training. So we look forward to talking with Doug today. The G-List is sponsored by Mainstream Financial. Mainstream Financial brings financial vision and clarity to your retirement plans. You want to talk to the folks at Mainstream Financial because you don't want your money to run out before you do. This edition of Tuesday of Thom, of course, is sponsored by our partners, the Best Girl Consulting Firm. Best Girl has been providing customized solutions to executive issues for over 34 years. So let's hear from Best Girl. Oh, we must have had something go wrong there. So that happens. I guess I will go on. I'll just tell you about Best Girl is a consulting firm that provides customized leadership, access, and inclusion, public relations, communications, and organizational consulting services. Clients include Fortune 500 companies, utilities, higher ed institutions, small businesses, and associations. Best Girl's team of consultants are led by Joyce Gilly Gossam. They partner with business and education clients to promote organizational effectiveness, communication, motivation, leadership, with always an impact on the company's bottom line. Best Girl customized consulting services include strategic planning, corporate communication, executive coaching, fundraising, and economic development. Best Girl creates the solution that fits your needs. So I am going to go to the round table. Just producers giving me a note here in my ear, as they say on television. So let's get to the roundtable regulars and introduce Barbara Wallace Edwards and Michael Walker. Barbara Wallace Edwards is a Mobile, Alabama native, currently living in Birmingham, Alabama. Barbara's been with us since the very start, and we appreciate her so much. Let's get Barbara on here. Barbara.
Good morning, Thom. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. What do you know good?
I'm coming live to you from the port city. I'm down in Mobile, Alabama, and happy Fat Tuesday to you, Thom. Today's the last day of the Mardi Gras celebration here in Mobile and, of course, across the world, New Orleans. And many people that don't know that Mobile actually is the home of Mardi Gras. It originated here rather than in New Orleans, and that's a little known fact. But tonight the festivities will end. But it's been a wonderful, wonderful Mardi Gras celebration so far.
I went to the Mardi Gras twice in New Orleans, way back when I was in college and crazy enough to go. How is it in Mobile? Is it as vibrant or?
It is definitely as vibrant. It's not as violent, though. I will tell you, I've actually gone to Mardi Gras in New Orleans as well, and it's not a family type environment. The Mardi Gras here in Mobile is much more family oriented. There's a lot of almost like family reunion type situations here. There's tailgating going on. People bring their grills and their chairs and they sit out and have a really good time. But children, and it's for everyone. You find lady sitting next to me yesterday at one of the Mardi Gras parades was in her 90s, and
wow.
two people down from me, they had a 1-year-old baby there. So it's all ages out there, and it's just people having a really, really good time.
You know, I when I went, it was so long ago, and it was definitely not a family atmosphere.
I know. I went once in New Orleans, and that was enough for me.
It was pretty crazy.
Yes, it was.
But we managed to have a good time. One year, one of the years we went was when they had the oil shortage and the gas shortage, and people would pull up to the pump and they'd pump gas and drive off, and people would try to catch them, and yeah, it was crazy, but we managed to have a good time, and we got in. I'll just tell you a quick story. So we decided we were going to go. It was 4 of us, all of us on the football team, and so individually we went to our respective coaches, your position coach, and made up stories as to why we wouldn't be at winter practice that Monday, because we didn't have it on Friday, so we were going to leave on Thursday and come back Tuesday in time for practice.
Right.
And so we all made up stories, and I told him my parents needed me to come home for something or whatever, and he said, okay, that's fine. Well, one guy didn't get his story straight, and so they called his house to talk to his mom because they didn't know where he was, and they were afraid he was missing or whatever. And she said, oh, well, they're all in New Orleans. He and Thomas and Rhett and Steve, they all went to New Orleans.
She told on everyone.
She did. And he was a freshman, and we told him, that's why we don't let you go anywhere with us, because you can't handle your business.
That's right. You should have trained him better than that before you left for the trip.
I should have. He's still not any better. So, anyway, let's get Michael on. Go ahead. You going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, I also want to thank my beautiful little sister for hosting a birthday celebration for me. It was a surprise once I arrived in Mobile, and just a small gathering with mainly family. But during COVID, I planned to really celebrate big for my 65th birthday, and couldn't do that because of COVID restrictions and my own concern about people, contracting COVID. So she decided to do something on a much smaller scale, and it was wonderful. I had a great time. So thank you, Lori Wallace.
Miss Lori.
Miss
Good morning,
Lori.
Lori. How are you this morning? I know she's watching us somewhere.
Yes, she is.
Let's get Michael on and see how he's doing. Michael, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, TG. Hope you're doing well. And Barbara, hope you're doing well also.
Now, Michael, I understand you're in Washington, D.C. today, and that they're loaded for bear up there. Everybody's strapped.
Yes, they are. Yeah. As they say, everybody's strapped and loaded. It's pretty interesting. The State of the Union tonight is going to be addressed by the President Biden. And we also have the truckers are coming in to protest, mask, and all kinds of stuff. And they're trying to get geared up for that. I guess they feel like, they don't want a repeat of what happened on January 6th. Sure. I don't think that's going to happen, but they're just not taking any chances. They have really tall wire fencing around the Capitol, right up the street from where I'm staying. And I got here like on a Thursday, and I just noticed that just parked in certain places, military vehicles throughout the city. And I was just, riding in an Uber and a cab going to different restaurants. I'm wondering what is going on. Are they expecting Russia to come over here and attack us or what? I didn't think about the truckers coming because all you hear on the news is Russia invading Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
And so I started thinking, are they expecting something like that? And then later on, I found out. And also I was really surprised in my hotel room. Every morning, there would just be more and more police officers coming in and to get breakfast and stuff. So, and I think they're getting the opportunity to eat, carte blanche for free, which is fine. I have no problem with that. I was just surprised at why I had so many police officers at my conference every morning when I went downstairs. But the Capitol is right up the street from us. And so they're just really trying to be very careful and cautious this time.
And they're being careful and cautious about any potential violence, not to say that that's going to happen, right. But also still with the COVID, because you were talking earlier before we came on about them cleaning your room and the breakfast. And I know that the last few times I've stayed in hotels, most of the time they don't come in and clean your room, or you've got to request it. Now, when it first started happening, when the COVID first hit, man, those rooms were sanitized.
Yes.
I mean, you could walk in there and feel clean just walking into the room,
Yes.
Right.
It's a little bit different now. And
yes.
But I think everybody is still, quote, being careful. So
yes.
You were talking about the breakfast, Michael?
Right. Yeah. You can go downstairs to the restaurant to get breakfast, but you either have to put it together yourself and go sit down in the restaurant or go back to your room. You can't go sit in the restaurant and order from a waiter or waitresses as before and have them bring it to you. So it's a little bit tricky there. I didn't understand, what's the difference in going down and getting your breakfast and then going sitting at the table.
But Michael, one of the things we talked about, that could be staffing issues. They may not have the wait staff anymore because they just can't find adequate staffing.
That's a possibility, but there's several people standing around down there when I go. So that's why I was a little confused with that issue, Yes. And today the mask mandate is going to come down here in the hotel. From Thursday up to this point, we were asked that whenever we leave our rooms, please put our mask on, because if not, the staff or the people that work in the hotel are supposed to ask you about that. And, they say, look, they're just doing their jobs, so just put your mask on. But whenever you get to where you're going, people just take it off anyway, like they're congregating down at the bar. So they take the mask off and they're standing around talking to everybody with the mask on, So, but starting today, there's no more mask.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that'll please some people. I never got to the point, never really understood the anger about it. think it was just kind of designed to try to keep us safe, but
Absolutely.
you know.
True. True.
So let me ask you guys this before we move on. Women's History Month. Barbara, can you talk a little bit about women's history in terms of your life?
Right. And Thom, women, of course, women have been very influential in my life. And one person in particular I want to talk about today is my grandmother, Earlene Tingle Law Washington. My grandmother, didn't receive her high school diploma, but she was such a classy lady, and always worked as a domestic worker or worked as a janitor in school systems. But you would have never known that. The way she dressed, the way she carried herself. I learned so much from her, and she really had a very impact on my life. And was, she had her first child at the age of 15.
Wow.
Married very early in life, but again, she carried herself like she had a PhD, and that went a long way with me. She, again, huge influence.
I think many people during certain eras carried themselves like they had PhDs,
Yes.
and they may not have had formal education.
Right.
But we were taught to respect everybody.
Right.
And I remember Mr. Jones at our school, who was the custodian, and you better respect Mr. Jones.
Absolutely.
They didn't play that. Michael, what about your women's history?
Well, everyone has heard me talk about my grandmother who...
I was getting ready to say that.
Yeah. Everybody's heard me talk about my grandmother, my grandfather, who raised me from the time I was 6 months old, and my affinity for them and appreciation. But what I'm going to do today, I'm going to talk about somebody else in unison with our guests today and children. Marion Wright Alderman. She was born in June of 1939, Bennettsville, South Carolina. She was the first African-American woman admitted to the Mississippi bar after graduating from Yale. But what she is most known for, in addition to being an NAACP attorney and representing civil rights, was that she founded the Children Defense Fund in 1973.
Wow.
To advocate for poor children, children of color, and children of disabilities. The Children Defense Fund urged passage of laws that promise equal education opportunity for all children. It also persuaded Congress to overhaul foster care, support adoption, and improve child care and protect children who are disabled, abused, or neglected. And Barbara, I'm sure you know who she is. She's one of your Saras.
Yes,
She's
she
a member
is.
of Delta Sigma Theta. And it's a couple things that she mentioned that I think is worth noting. She said, if you do not like the way the world is, you have an obligation to change it. Just do it one step at a time.
Yes.
And she also said, we must reject any leaders for any reason play political football with our children's lives and our nation's future, continuing to further advocate for children.
A lot of people need to hear that message today. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. And I'm sure that our G-list guests will have some comment on that. But yeah, that's great, Michael. I'll just jump in and say that, boy, I certainly, I had two women who were just, well, more than two, but my mom and my mother-in-law who were have been very influential in my life. And I remember my mom. Did you all ever get these stories? So if Jimmy jumps off the cliff, you gonna jump off too?
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
yes.
Mama, I'm not gonna jump off.
It was Johnny in my case. But
Yeah.
Same thing.
Because you did what your friend did, you know?
Right.
Yes,
Right.
yes. There was something my grandma used to always say, think before you leap. And then she'll move on to, if so-and-so jump off that bridge, you're going to go jump off.
Right. You're going to jump off too. Well, it depends on what I'm jumping into, Mama.
Right.
That's right. You guys, I want to get on over to the G list. You guys got anything else going on you want to talk about?
No, that's it for me.
No,
Let's talk to
that's
Doug.
let's talk to Doug and the children
All
health
right, let's do it.
hospital.
Let's do
Okay.
it. Well, first of all, Sean's got a, what do you call it? Big money, Sean? Big
Yes,
money,
Big Money
Sean
Sean.
has got a minute to share with us. Sean, where are you?
Good morning. My name is Sean Jones, and this is Got a Minute. Guess what today is? Well, today is the first day of Women's History Month, where we commemorate and encourage the study, observance, and celebration of the vital role of women in American history. In 1982, Women's History Month started out as Women's History Week. After being petitioned for 5 years by the National Women's History Project, in 1987, Congress designated the month of March as Women's History Month, where we celebrate the contributions women have made to the United States and recognize the specific achievements women have made over the course of American history in a variety of fields. Got a Minute's quote of the day is in honor of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. RBG was an American lawyer and jurist who served as an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States from 1993 until her death in 2020. She presented a strong voice in favor of gender equality, the rights of workers, and the separation of church and state. Women belong in all places where decisions are being made. It shouldn't be that women are the exception. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Thank you all for joining in. My name is Sean Jones, and this is Got a Minute.
Sean, yeah, let's give Sean a hand there. Thank you. I think Sean's enjoying this. Okay. Well, we're going to move on to our G-List guest today. Our G-List Mainstream Financial Group provides financial services sponsors our G-List. So let's hear from Mainstream.
Mainstream Financial Group provides financial services for both individuals and businesses. Mainstream's mission is to understand the unique needs of every client and work closely with you, assembling a team to develop and manage your resources to help you accomplish your defined financial goals. Mainstream's financial professionals will provide you with a complimentary, no obligation financial review. Now, these professionals can then offer you custom advice to mend together the pieces of your financial life and come up with a plan that is truly comprehensive. Mainstream Financial assists retirees and those close to retirement in planning for a secure retirement so not to run out of money during your lifetime. You can take advantage of opportunities with tailored advice and the resources to act on it. Mainstream Financial Group, www.mainstreamfg.com, 205-324-0589.
Mainstream Financial Group. Don't let your money run out before you do. So let's get to our G-List guest for today. Remember, Hollywood has the A-list, and here on Tuesdays with Thom, we have the G-List where everybody is a star. And today's G-List guest is Doug Dean. Doug is the Chief Human Resource Officer for Children's Hospital of Alabama. In this position, he is responsible for all human resource operations, including executive and physician compensation and benefits, employee relations, recruitment, selection, compensation, benefits, human resource information systems, employee health, human resource development, and training. Doug is a native of Birmingham. He began his career serving as a full-time youth minister at St. Peter's Church in Hoover, which is not too far from where I used to live. Doug is married to the former Valerie Ciccio, and they are the parents of 3 daughters, so Doug knows all about women's history. He better. Anyway, so let's get to him. and see what he's got to say to us this morning. Doug, where are you, buddy? How are you?
Fantastic, and I'll lose this in a minute. Just for you, Thom.
I can't believe you put it on.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Michael and Barbara are pretty friendly to that logo as well.
They are.
I will lose the partisan cap in a moment, so that I don't alienate 60% of my Crimson audience in Birmingham and surrounding area. After all, they're on the mountaintop, but not in basketball, right?
No, right now we're on top, so we'll see.
With it being the beginning day of Women's History Month, I would be remiss if I didn't wish Barbara, your colleague on the show, a happy 39th birthday. At least looking at Barbara, I think it's about 39th birthday. And I also wanted to compliment her organization that she's a part of, Mercy Deliverance Ministries. Last week in Vestavia area, I was really happy and privileged to be in the audience in which we celebrated and honored the great Tony Vines, who founded Mercy Deliverance Ministries, for a Lifetime Achievement Award. So that was a big deal, and that spills right over into Women's History Month.
It does. That's great. So let's get started. I'm going to ask you. I got a question for you, this is a term I haven't heard before: the Great Resignation. And it says, how can we get workers back into the workforce? Can you take that and run with it?
Thank you. It's a topic that has a lot of merit to it, but I'm going to make a miniature case that some of it is misunderstood, and because it's really requires multivariate analysis. Not, as human beings, we like there to just be one cause for everything. It's just easier to wrap our brains around, but it's absolutely the case, and alarming if you're trying to staff an organization, almost regardless of industry, Thom, that workers are checking out. And the narrative since 2020, the pandemic start, we've really had now 2 or 2.5 separate pandemics, arguably, but COVID got a lot of the blame for workers checking out, the Great Resignation. But I think a closer analysis and leaning to people who really know economic forecasting and labor supply and so on, and I'll actually recommend to your viewers an ebook that's free of charge online called The Demographic Drought. The Demographic Drought, a powerful read that really breaks this apart. But what's really going on is, and several big factors. The first is the baby boomers, who all tides rose with the baby boomers in terms of workers and staffing organizations. And they have in earnest really started retiring and enjoying their golden years. So that was a major force. It was coming before the 2020 pandemic. Add to it that is equally disturbing due to delayed marriages, lower fertility rates that I'm not smart enough to explain. We have not a baby boom like we had with the boomers in the 40s and 50s that created the workforce that ran this great economy, but we've had a baby bust, so to speak, in terms of numbers. So it's alarming as we continue to grow an economy and we need more and more workers. It's actually shrinking. The last comment I'd make, and let you react, and we can go further into it if you want. I was talking to an economic forecaster, and he said a better term, and I think a New York Times article has poured into this, has analyzed this. It's really more accurately the Great Relocation to some extent. So you have some of these cities for different reasons, people retiring. And I don't mean to besmirch any great city in this country at all, but there's some policies since the pandemic in some large cities that have caused people either to retire or to relocate, not resign, but relocate. And where do you think, Thom, no trick question here, what region of the U.S. do you think they relocated to?
They're relocating to the South.
Here. And so it's all of those. It's not one thing, it's many things. And so the intellectual challenge for leaders in any organization, any industry right now, is to figure out how to be far better at catering to our workers, creating a great employee experience, almost as if we're the Four Seasons hotel, and we're constantly asking our employees, what can we do to make your stay more pleasant, kind of thing. And then also have new and better ways to attract people into our particular cultures going forward.
Can you just tell me a couple of things that, and I hate to say you guys, but that have come up, a couple of solutions that have proven to work in this situation?
Well, I make no claim to infallibility in terms of having solved this. It's a complicated challenge, but I would, Children's of Alabama. First of all, I like to joke, but it's actually pretty on point that in some ways I have the easiest HR leadership job in the city of Birmingham, only because, not that we don't have pressures of production and stresses and so on, but we have such a powerful story to tell. And I think that once we locate and identify, it could be new grad nurses, and that's our primary source of incoming talent for reasons that are, would be on another show, that you almost never convert an adult healthcare worker to pediatrics and vice versa. But once we identify talent that really relates to our mission of pediatric care, taking care of families, taking a child who's sick and creating a miracle with the help of physicians, technology, and just great care, then we have a huge advantage, and they bond with that mission. And they're there not just for the pay, but for powerful reasons that are heartfelt. It's like the great quote, which I use all the time. When you work at Children's, and this is true of so many great organizations, they can tell the same story. People like me and all of our workers at Children's, Thom, it's not a have to job, it's a get to. I get to be part of this mission and this organization. So I think what we're working on, we're doing, of course, all the things with retention bonuses, pay, compensation action that we haven't seen as generous in 20 years, because that's the market. We paid bonuses for staff to get vaccinated for COVID. That's why we're at approximately a 95% vaccination rate if you adjust for some who had medical or religious exemptions. But it's really the differentiator is culture. Unless you can create some powerful, heartfelt reason people bond with you, then overnight you can take pay action or time off or medical plans, and those are important. But overnight, your competitors can match that. So it's really not a competitive advantage. But creating a unique culture that bonds with millennials in particular is, I think, the secret sauce.
In dealing with culture, and I know Michael and Barbara want to get on it. So how I know that DEI has been big in many large organizations. How has that affected your DEI programs?
Timely, great question. With us just completing Black History Month, entering Women's History Month, I'm proud. In some ways, just being very open with you and your audience, I think you could characterize Children's of Alabama as one company, not the only one by any means, that has done more to promote and foster valuing diversity and inclusion, but without being very loud about it, if you will. And that is about to radically change. I've never been prouder of our leadership team and several high-powered leaders, in particular, Delisha Mason, our chief nursing officer, we have worked together, and we are beginning our own much more formal and much more visible journey on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And our intention is to start, this is sort of like a movie trailer, Thom, since you're an actor, I can't give away the whole movie because I would work against the element of power and surprise. But we're beginning with a deeply moving video to our entire workforce that shows the faces and voices of all the beautiful rainbow of employees of every background imaginable, saying it's time for us to begin a journey to get better on all of those things: diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we're going to follow that starting with, as the great Stephen Covey liked to say, first seek to understand before we I open my mouth and have opinions about everything. So we're going to start with a computer-based training on all the areas of DEI and bring our employees up to the same basic knowledge level. And then we follow from there to have conversations, really engage our workers on what do they feel, what is their experience of diversity, equity, and inclusion at Children's. And there will even be applications to making sure when these children come into our organization that we don't unwittingly have any difference whatsoever in the quality of care or the experience that families have regardless of their demographic background.
That sounds great, Doug. Let me get Michael and Barbara on here. I know they got some questions for you. Barbara, I think you and Doug worked together at one point at another organization. Where is she? Hey, Barbara.
Thom, good morning. Good
morning.
Doug.
Barbara.
My friend from many years ago at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Alabama. It's so good to see you and have you with us.
Thank you. You were a superstar, still are.
Oh, thank you so much. So were you. We lost a gem when you left Blue Cross. So thank you so much for being with us
Thank
today.
you, Barbara.
I wanted to ask you about something that I know personally. I have several family members who work in the medical field, nurses, respiratory therapists, social workers, and several of them have been approached by recruiting companies or staffing agencies about becoming traveling positions and, going to other states and even other countries. Has that been a problem for Children's Hospital losing staff members to the traveling, I'll call it the traveling association world?
It's a powerful question, as usual, and an intellect like Barbara Edwards is on point with one of the most, threatening tendencies. It's again, much like I was saying earlier, the travel phenomenon did not begin with the pandemic. It was probably accelerated by that.
Right.
I want to be careful not to sound like I'm gloating at our particular advantages. Every healthcare organization's challenges to staff and operation are unique to them. In our case, and we are proud of it, and it's our intention, it's not accidental. We have not had, other than isolated cases over the last 10 years of very few travel staff brought in, we have been able to continue to operate Alabama's largest comprehensive pediatric healthcare organization without having to augment staffing with travel nurses. And there are other skills that utilize travel. Briefly, for our listeners, viewers that may not know what we're talking about exactly, let's say a hospital in an OR or any area is short of staff by 10 or 20%, which is not uncommon. Then they've got a mission to staff the beds and take care of patients. And so you can get in a situation where you can't hire and retain fast enough with permanent workers paid, based on market rates. So they go to these travel agencies and they bring staff in. It might be for 30 days, 90 days. Here's the insidious part that it's hard to break out of. They bring them in at a markup of anywhere from 30 to 40% higher than your staff that they're going to be alongside working, delivering patient care. As you might imagine, human beings like to talk as well they should. And your permanent staff find out very quickly the disparity in compensation. So there's a risk that it can become a slippery slope and you start to lose your own staff to travel organizations. And so it can be a tactic. It can also cause you to get in a little bit of a death spiral in terms of your operating costs, your staffing challenges. And I want to be clear. I don't sit in judgment of any hospital that has to make that move just to meet their patient care demands. But it's kind of an insidious challenge that is throughout healthcare these days. But we have not had to introduce that into our staffing strategy.
Great.
Okay, it's Michael around. Let's see what Michael's got to ask for.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning, Doug. And I'm going to say War Eagle to you.
That's right. We're a basketball school, aren't we?
That's right. We'll take it any way we can. As Bruce Pearl say, we're everything school. Our gymnastics team is number 5 in the nation. Basketball is number 5. Baseball's going to be good. So we'll bring football back around. Doug, I want to say to you, the question that I'm going to ask you, let me give you a little bit of background, is that I am currently here in DC for a conference with the National Association of Health Underwriters, which is an advocacy group for consumers, agents, and brokers working in the healthcare space as far as providing services and what have you in insurance. So one of the big topics that we're talking about right now is healthcare transparency. And I want to ask you about the impact of transparency within Children's Hospital. And you can kind of explain to everybody about transparency and what I'm talking about.
Well, I don't claim to be an expert on that arena, but there's no question, and I think mostly for the good. I think there's going to be some, if we're not careful, some things may get lost in translation about how, for example, money flows through payors like my former employer and Barbara's Blue Cross Blue Shield, all the national healthcare payors into the provider world. And then you get Michael to the quality side of it. I think it's actually excellent that we as providers, healthcare providers, hospitals, clinics, outpatient, and so on, feel some pressure to be much better at gathering the metrics, the data. For example, infection rates, pretty straightforward, should be easily measured. We have, as anyone that's worked in the hospital world knows, an accrediting body, the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Hospitals. So there are a lot of controls and pretty amazing national quality initiatives in which, for example, when an error, a patient care error, medication error, whatever it may be, occurs, that is extremely rapidly shared. The root cause analysis with the entire hospital world, not just domestically, but internationally in many cases. Then you have teams that immediately mobilize and work to eradicate that risk from an error from occurring again without actually having to repeat the same error through human mistakes in your own hospital. But on the realm of transparency, I think our public wants and deserves to understand, how do we perform, what are our outcomes on any given procedure or surgery. For example, if my child needs a heart transplant, how does Birmingham or Atlanta or any hospital in particular stack up in terms of successful outcomes on a national basis? And you have very public reports, analyses like U.S. News and World Report, best hospitals in America, that we take very seriously and work every year to be in that top list on every service imaginable. So I think what we need is, you've heard the saying, a decoder ring. In some ways, when you talk about the complexities that you and Barbara from your backgrounds well understand, when you take the world of how hospitals bill and get paid, and for example, why is there a markup to here on charges? And as Barbara will recall from our Blue Cross, both of you will, why is that discounted 40+%? And why is the game played that way? And if you have a high deductible plan and health savings account, how can I go online and find in my community the best and most affordable place to get a particular procedure? So I think there's work to do on the transparency front. And I think consumers need a better decoder ring and education and access to how to make sense of it. And I think we're probably in the embryonic stage of that long overdue mission happening. Sorry if I was long-winded.
No, but that was very well done, and we needed to find that out, and especially when you talk to the pricing concept, because you can go down the street right here to get a procedure done, and it may cost you $3,000 or what have you, and then you can go maybe in the next state, and that may be $1,500, and you want to know what's the difference. What about the quality of care? And unfortunately, most people think, and we've been taught to think this way, that if you pay more for it, you get more quality. Not necessarily in healthcare, because you have regulations and standards that you have to adhere to. So that price markup doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a better quality of care. It just costs you more. And
Michael, if I can interject, we would all be remiss if we didn't mention that one of the most explosive, inflation's higher right now, but long before the last couple of years of challenge with cost of goods and services, prescription drugs, especially specialty drugs, has been the major driver in employer-sponsored health plans, self-funded plans like ours, just cost escalating through the roof. So there's a lot of innovation there. I don't want to be unfair to the pharmacy benefit management, the big pharma world that does indeed discover things that heal people. But I think any fair observer would say there's some pricing games going on that are worthy of. I'm not a fan of overregulation, but this one, that world certainly screams to have innovation and better regulation to bring some price fairness to things.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I was going to mention PBM, so I'm glad you brought that up. And just quickly, Thom, you remember when there was an issue with the EpiPen, that people need the EpiPen and stuff? Yes. Okay, and there was this one entrepreneur that had gotten some patents that expired, and he were able to get those, and he was charging like $2,000 and $3,000 for the EpiPen, when in actuality you could get it for $600. He ended up going to jail, by the way.
Okay. All right, Barbara, you got anything else?
Doug, I just want to ask you about other challenges you face. We've talked about staffing. Are there any other challenges you're faced with at Children's in regards to hiring, staffing, training that you want to tell us more about?
Well, bring you into behind the Wizard of Oz curtain for a minute. In my world, and as HR leader at Children's, now 23 years, just makes me old, Barbara, not smarter.
No, you're smarter.
I appreciate it. But, it's interesting in the whole realm of succession management and being really planful and intentional about that. You can't, we're a culture that if you're doing your job as a leader and you're performing well, then you're not shown the door. It's not like the old GE days in which every year that you purge anybody graded C, which is kind of alarming and threatening. That's not our culture. But we look around now, and it's exciting on the one hand that we've got some rising stars that are part of our executive leadership team that I every one of them, I could make the case that their upside is higher levels in the C-suite, even CEO level, if they continue to grow and develop. On the other hand, at least half of our leadership team, and you can add me to that number, are just unless the plan is for people to work to 75, we need to develop more bench strength. And that absolutely is going to connect, as it should, with our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. Yes. To over a period of years, as we're replacing internally, hopefully some externally, strong leadership for the next 20 years. Our hope and our expectation would be that we make enormous gains on our executive leadership team, resembling and representing the very community we serve. So that would be high on the list. Also high on the list is our grave concern about our service workers, our hospitality workers. We can't sustain 40% turnover, and we were great at hiring people, but we need to figure out what is the career path and reskilling. How can we give people that enter our organization in environmental services, food services, transport, those really important skills that run an operation like ours, but how can we bring them in and immediately create excitement that they can advance and grow and have an exciting career and never leave Children's of Alabama. So those are two that keep me up a little bit late at night, sometimes with a glass of red vino just to take the edge off.
We understand.
Your edges have been rounded by now, brother.
One would hope, Thom.
Anybody else? Anything? Doug, anything else you want to add?
Well, I just want to compliment, first of all, I want to thank my friend Valton Johnson for inviting me on your behalf to come on the show. And I want to compliment the work you do. I'm going to become a regular in following you guys. I think the content, I love the tone that you brought to the table. It's balanced. It's not hard. I didn't ever hear anything harsh or overly partisan, but you have opinions. You should share them. So bravo. And as I understand, Thom, you must know your role in married life to call this the Best Girl Show. Is that kind of the origin of all this?
It is. Best Girl is the name of our company. And,
I'm sorry. So props to your lovely bride. And it's just a delight to connect again with you, Barbara and Michael. all the best. Be safe in DC and hope you get back to the Atlanta area in one piece.
Thank you. Just before you go, I'd like to ask you a question on the lighter side. I noticed that you enjoy hunting. What do you hunt in particular? Where do you go hunting?
Well, I started the show with an Auburn hat on, lost half my audience, and now you've outed me as an avowed bow. I'm strictly a bow hunter, archery, and I'm a very avid whitetail deer hunter. I get to go to Illinois where those monster whitetail bucks lurk every November or so. I'm thinking about a sublease up there, 200 acres, when I ride off into the sunset where no one else can hunt it. We can watch with cameras. Now they transmit what's happening with deer, and you're not even there. It pops onto your cell phone, and you can say, well, it looks like we need to go next week, when you have the luxury to do that. But I've also taken archery into the danger zones of bear country in Canada and Alaska. And when you are drawing back at 15 yards with an animal that can hunt you back, Michael, you don't need to have a stress test, cardio test with your physician that particular year. So I love the outdoors, and I shoot more with my camera recently than I do any archery or weapon, if that helps those who are not necessarily open-minded about we hunters.
Well, good for you.
All right. Good deal, Doug. You talked earlier, and I'll say this and we'll move on, about you brought up football, and I just want to tell you that where you guys are, where your building is, my elementary school and our church was 2 blocks up, and there was a vacant field between where you guys are and where my school was. And after school, we would go down there on that field, and that's where we learned to play football.
Wow.
We played football on that field, and I went to Catholic school, so we wore uniforms. We'd go down there and play in our uniforms until I tore the knees out of my pants. And then, from that point on, I thought my mom was. But the next morning she had a bag. I said, "What's this bag for?" She said, "That's an extra pair of pants. You can play football in those, but you can't play football in your uniform pants because we have to buy those." So that was my experience with children. So.
Well, you're probably at time here, but I got to say to your audience, because I remember you was robbed, as they say, Thom, in the 1974 Iron Bowl, and whoever that referee was that didn't help out and call it right, I hope that his iPhone charger doesn't work.
Well, I'm gonna move on from that. Doug, thank you so much, man. It's good to talk. Would you tell Mike I said hello, and tell Coke I said hello?
I sure will, and Godspeed to all of y'all, and look forward to celebrating Women's History Month. I've got three daughters, and I grew up with in between 2 sisters. I better understand the importance of women.
Yes,
you had better.
Absolutely.
Well,
take care.
Let me close out. Thank you, Doug. We appreciate you, brother.
All right. See you later.
In commentary, or as I see it, let me close out by paying tribute to former Auburn and NFL running back Lionel Little Train James, who passed away last week at the age of 59. If you saw him play, you know why they called him Little Train. He was small in stature, but as described by one of his teammates as pound for pound, one of the greatest all-purpose players to ever play the game of football. James also played 5 seasons with the then National Football League San Diego Chargers. I think now they're the Los Angeles Chargers. Trained as number 18 on Auburn's career rushing list. He was inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame in 2006, and we offer condolences to his family. Entering into Women's History Month, let me just close out by paying tribute to my mom, my mother-in-law, who both passed on, and to other women who helped to shape and mold me, my grandmothers, my wife, and all who helped to mold me into the man that I am. I am a part of their women's history. I can name some of those, particularly the educators. Sister Mary Carmelo, Miss Horn, Miss Jackson, Mrs. McGee were all educators who took an interest in me and were wonderful to me. They were very influential in my life. I thank them for taking the time to help me shape my own history. And that is how I see it on March the 1st in the year 2022. And that's our show for today. We want to thank the audience. We appreciate you as always. Thank Michael and Barbara. Thank the G-List guest, Doug Dean. Doug, you were wonderful. I look forward to seeing you. Thank our sponsors, Best Girl Inc. and Mainstream Financial Group. Thank Emily Hedrick, the communicator, our producer, Sean Jones, the organizer and the author and creator of Got a Minute. Thank Joyce Gilly Gossam. Remember to enjoy yourself. Make every day count. Stay safe. Peace.